this is Gil Cedillo. This is the Housing Committee, Wednesday, June 13th, 2018, room 1010, City Hall. It is 3 p.m., 200 North Spring Street, Los Angeles, California, 90012. I recognize that we have a full body. Quorum is met. Can we go to public comment? Patricia McAllister. We'll save her spot during this period. Liliana Davera? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Are you ready? Huh? If you're ready.
Do I get the multiple items?
Sure. It's on the kiosk now. We have
Which one?
Public comment. I have got also Liliana and then Elizabeth Eastland. You might want to work your ways to the table.
Okay, my public comment is item here where you, on Skid Row, you want to change that around so that the people, you want to have the development at 1205 East 6th Street to replace the housing that you currently have Weezer approved for, and then one called the Olympia Apartments at 1201 East 7th Street. And you want to replace that with the Rossmore Apartments in 905. Now, I have problems with that because we don't know how much money. I know Weezer has a...
Can you hold a second? We want to make sure we get your time right. Go ahead.
What's going on? Okay. There we go. It's
running on his, but it's not running on.
okay.
Are you able to see your time?
Yes, I can see it now. 1 minute. That's what it says.
Okay.
Okay, so it's Weezer is already asking for $38 million for on 7th and Wall Street, where it's not being built new. It's just taking it and remodeling it, adding plumbing and whatnot. That's not $38 million. You don't need $38 million. So I'm trying to keep track of the money because you guys keep moving things around, but the numbers are not adding up. Now, another thing here, I want to talk about the fact that of this violence and human trafficking. This council and this mayor said nothing to Governor Brown about legalizing child prostitution. I was a teacher. I'm still a teacher. And for me to tell a student, you can prostitute, little girl, just we're going to get you some counseling. No, I would never do that. I would tell them and teach them, don't prostitute. You're not supposed to do that. So since you approved it, that is domestic violence because they're going to be picked up by these pimps, and not only the young girls, the women. More abuse will be done on women because you've now created a new pimping industry here in California. And the media is not running it, but we have 300,000 new cases of venereal diseases in California last year, and I can bet you half were children because children don't know better. Women, we know how to protect ourselves. Children don't know better. So this council is to blame for that. Look it up, 300,000 new cases. Now my public comment is about that HHH, $1.2 billion. Like I said, Weezer wants $38 million for something he's refurbishing. The area. Now, one other thing that's really terrible here, the black people on Skid Row won't get this housing because you have it under AMI. AMI is the area of medium income. And you know all these lofts around here, these condominiums, that's going to raise that up very high, and the poor will not be able to get in that housing. Now, you've hired 800 lawyers. They're on staff. Their job is to make sure stuff like this don't happen. Where are the loopholes? We don't want the middle class and upper class people living in this affordable housing because with the AMI, that's what that means. And I've done my research on it. Some cities are complaining because they've increased the geographical areas, so you're catching more wealthy people and they're moving into the housing while the poor people are still on the street. I want these 800 lawyers to come up with something to bypass this AMI on Skid Row. That's why he built it so close to Flower down here. He didn't take it to the middle of Skid Row because he wanted, Weezer wanted to catch those people, those rich and middle income people. Had he gone closer into Skid Row, he may have been able to get some of that housing for the black. I'm going to stick up for my people. I don't care if other black people don't want to stick up for these Mexicans and everybody else. I'm black, and I'm sticking up for black folks. Just like the Mexicans stick up for Mexicans, the Jews stick up for Jews, and everybody else. I'm sticking up for my people. Thank you for all the time, and the clock went off purposely so I get more time today. Thank you.
Antonia Ramirez, please.
Yeah, it works.
Clock, right? Yeah, can you get us a clock?
I mean, my count's down, it's just that it's
One
not
moment,
making
please.
any.
Thank you very much. I'll start with my public comments. I need to forewarn you of an impending doom that has potential dire consequences in Los Angeles and public safety violations. I am putting you on notice. I am here to protect innocent lives and property. Evidently tonight, they're supposed to have a takedown. The Skid Row people, homeless people, are going to be uniting with the Placita, gangbangers, Mexican Mafia, Mara Salvatrucha, Norteños, Sureños. One of them is Shorty, who lives on the corner on his tent on Spring and Cesar Chavez. The other one is Joker and his girlfriend, Lisa, white trash, the lesbian junkies, Boo Boo, Capone, Maria, heroin addicts, and they're Latinos, and Joe the Guardian. They're going to be at El Pueblo Park, LA City Lawn, Main Street, and Spring Street and Broadway Street. Now get these streets run parallel. Main Street, Spring Street, Broadway Street, from Cesar Chavez to First Street. They're going to be stealing property, whacking people with thick chains, setting tents on fire, and stealing from people and attacking military veterans as well. So again, I'm putting that out because I've heard it, and I want to make sure that nobody gets hurt. Nobody. So again, Skid Row is uniting with the Latino gangs, and there's going to be mayhem, and there's going to be a big brouhaha. So again, ladies and gentlemen, that is my concern. And God help us. So protect yourselves if you're walking in any of those streets. They're going to be coming down all around this area. El Pueblo Park, LA City Lawn, Main Street, Spring Street, Broadway Street, between Cesar Chavez and First Street. Watch yourselves. Again, they're also going to be on their bikes, whacking and hurting and stealing people. I don't know if it involves vehicles. I couldn't tell you. But they're going to be also at the Grand Park in the bathrooms, in La Placita bathrooms, in Olvera Street, all over. So please take care of yourselves. Anyway, I've been getting a lot of these rubber bands, and these rubber bands mean that they're going to pop you. So I've gotten already these several times. They're going to pop me. These clips, paper clips, I've gotten several of them. This means that they're going to shank me. Okay, I get them at the bathroom counters, around my tent, all the time. So when and where, I don't give a rat's ass. If it's my time, it's my time. But this is what it means. A penny means danger, danger, danger. So I've been getting the notices, and I'm giving you what's going out there. To me, this is important. I want to save lives, everybody's lives. I don't care who they are. But again, these are gangbangers and illegals, please, and junkies. God bless America,
Thank
and
you.
God bless Donald Trump.
You're done. Thank you.
Okay. That concludes public comment.
Singles.
Were you on a specific item or a general public comment?
Specific item.
Okay, we'll call you when your item comes up. You're good. Don't go away.
You called her for names or?
I know, I misspoke.
Okay.
Don't go away. You'll be caught up in a minute. Okay, let's go with consent items. Items 1 through 15.
Move the consent calendar.
Move. Items 1 through 15 moved and seconded, so be the order. Items 17 through 21.
Okay. Item number 17, communication from the mayor relative to the reappointment of Ms. Paula Leftwich to the Rent Adjustment Commission for the term ending May 20th, 2022.
Move on consent. Item moved on consent.
No objection.
Now let's have items 23. Is that consent or? Items 23, 24 on consent.
Okay.
No objection on items 23, 24, consent. We're going to hold item 25. Okay. Item 22 is at the desk. Is that correct?
All righty. Okay. Item 22, Municipal Facilities Committee Report relative to the authorization to acquire the real property located at 18447 Sherman Way and 7217 to 7227 Canby Avenue.
Move on consent.
No objection.
It's just a technical amendment, no objection. Okay. We go to 2016 now. So we're good with consent? Item 22?
I'm sorry?
Item 22 moved on consent.
All right.
You got that? Okay, remaining items for the committee. We've got item 16.
Item number 16, communication from the mayor relative to the reappointment of Mr. Ben Bessley to the Housing Authority of the City of Los Angeles Board of Commissioners for the term ending June 6,
Mr. Bessley?
How did 2014 get in there? 22.
Mr. Bessley, thank you. Welcome for joining us. Tell us about your experiences so far and how we're going to move the city forward.
Thank you very much for having me. I would be happy to answer any questions, or I can just give you some background on myself and what we've been doing for the last 4 years at the Housing Authority.
Sure, please.
All right.
That's what I asked for.
So my background is in first out of school in education. I spent about 7 years working in education, running after-school tutoring centers, and then got involved in real estate development in 2002, and have been doing housing development for a few different private firms over the last 15 years throughout the state of California, everywhere from north of San Francisco down to San Diego, and was asked a little over 4 years ago to join the Housing Authority Board, and joined as a commissioner. First commission I'd had the chance to serve on, and have since then become the chair of that board. And in that time, you know, we have really taken on a couple of major initiatives. The first is trying to restructure the staff and focus them on more strategic efforts. The second is to look at holistically the portfolio of assets that the Housing Authority is managing, and making sure that those are being carefully evaluated, and that we're spending money where we should be spending it, and that all, you know, major investments are carefully vetted. And then finally, you know, I think one of our signature achievements, I hope we'll look back on the Jordan Downs redevelopment and see that as a success for the city. It was something that, well, I'll get to that in a moment. In terms of the staff, executive staff restructuring, when I joined, the other commissioners and I were, I think, we're spending a lot of time in the details of a lot of items we were dealing with, and it felt like our commission was trying to manage the organization. In that time, we've had some turnover in our commissioners. We've brought on a couple of great new commissioners. I'm very proud of the other commissioners that I get the chance to serve with, and we've really focused our oversight on the executive management, specifically the CEO, Doug Guthrie, and then allowed him, with advice from the council, to really manage through his organization and hold him accountable to that management. He knows the organization day to day. He's got 40 years of experience in this, and really serve as, you know, what we believe a board should serve as, which is a sounding board to executive management. And if we can't trust them to, you know, make good purchasing decisions on paper towels, you know, we've got bigger issues. So I think we've been successful at doing that. When I started, we would typically have anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes of public comment for every meeting. I think this is a good sign that we have virtually no public comment at our meetings anymore because when we do have our annual meetings, we actually encourage every single comment to be followed up by staff. And I think the people that come to our meetings know now that when they have something to say, they'll be heard, and there's other channels for bringing important issues rather than coming to a commission hearing, which we absolutely encourage and we absolutely welcome. But I think there's again, for the time, for the volunteer commissioners' time and for the staff's time, there's a better use of that time at that venue. So I think we've been pretty successful at that. Looking at the investment across the portfolio, it's hard to overstate the importance of having this amount of affordable housing at the level of affordability that we have it. It's not enough. It's not enough by a long shot. But really preserving and trying to expand that as best we can is the first thing we think about with pretty much everything we do. So we were looking at, again, looking at how money was being spent on capital repairs and the way our funding is structured through HUD, and realized that, again, dealing with things on a one-off basis it's a short-term perspective. So with actually some good forethought from our CEO and some of the executive staff, they brought forward proposals for a strategic plan. We vetted a bunch of different firms. We ended up spending a significant amount of money and internal resources to do a long-term strategic plan, which is in process now. It's about 1.5 years in. It'll probably be done in another year. And it really gives us a blueprint for everything from staffing to assets to the populations we serve. It'll be a living document, but it'll show us where we're going in the next 30 years. And so I think that also, given the significance of what we're dealing with and the how important this housing is to so many people, it's I think money well spent. And then finally, the Jordan Downs redevelopment it was an investment that started long before I think virtually anybody in that building started working there. And there was certainly, we asked the question, is this worth, continuing to support? And we have invested a lot of money and a lot of time in that. But I think looking back on those decisions now, we're very happy that we have, because the opportunities that this strategic plan is going to present, some of them will potentially have a redevelopment suggestion for certain of our sites, or at least a significant repositioning. And to go through this process with Jordan Downs, with significant community outreach, with significant design input from the community, I think that wherever we go next, we'll be able to point to the Jordan Downs example and say, this is what the Housing Authority can do when focused, on a certain set of priorities. So it's under construction right now. I think phase 1 should deliver by the end of this year. We're doubling the number of homes out there, maintaining affordability and maintaining the right for everybody that lives there now to return if they would like. So it's a great effort by our staff. And finally, I'll share with you that I had the chance to actually spend a night at one of the housing developments at Imperial Courts. I was hosted by one of the residents there and have gotten to know some of the residents personally and visit them on occasion. And it really is amazing how much LAPD has played a really important role in the success and the safety of those properties, and how hard so many people are working to make those communities great. So there are, if you're able to get on the Housing Authority's email list and hear of the events that are going on, they're really worth showing up to, because it's a long ways from this building. But it's a really wonderful community that is very vibrant, and it's growing, and I think there's a lot of opportunity there. So it has been a real pleasure to serve on the board. I hope I'm allowed to serve for another 4 years. I'd really like to, and I'm happy to address any specific questions, and also if there's observations that the council members have on this committee. Also, always looking for feedback on either the performance or perception of our Housing Authority.
Any questions? Jordan Downs? Nope. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Besley, I first just want to thank you for your service so far, and what I know about your professional background and your educational background, the city's very blessed to have your service, so thank you very much. I want to ask you a professional question or two, and if I don't mean to put you on the spot, so if I do, it's okay, you can get back to me. But you mentioned the Jordan Downs project. Do you happen to know ballpark what that project on a per unit basis is going to cost, what the construction cost will be?
I will hazard a guess, and I'm sure I'm wrong, but I think it'll be in an order of magnitude that might lead to a further conversation. I'm happy to try.
Yeah.
I would say it's roughly between $500,000 and $600,000 per home per unit.
Okay.
Yeah.
And out there in your professional world, when you're building large multifamily residential buildings, what's typically the range of cost for construction?
For the type of product that's being built out there, so I would separate into two different pieces. The building itself, from foundation up, probably costs $180,000.
So,
and everything below that, which is included in the cost of the Jordan Downs development, is probably another. It depends on the price you pay for the land and what you have to do to it. But it could be anywhere from another 100 to, call it all in. We would expect that cost to be ballpark $300,000 to $400,000.
okay. The construction cost, private sector construction cost, multifamily, you're running a little under $200,000 a door.
Yes.
Okay. So the chair has been very active and vocal about this for a long time, about the need to increase our housing stock at every price point throughout the city, but particularly when it comes to affordable housing and supportive housing and all the other things that we're emphasizing so much. I will say it's been a frustration of mine, and I think I can speak probably for all of my colleagues in sharing the frustration that we have and the very, very high cost that we pay for the units that we want to develop many more of with limited resources. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean to put you on the spot now. If you want to make some comments on that now, that's great. If you don't, maybe you could provide some comments to us about recommendations that you might have for how we can bring the cost down in order to be able to build more units and house more people.
I am so glad you asked this question. This is actually something that I am very personally interested in. I had the chance to actually speak on this topic at HCID and at UCLA, and so I've had the chance to do some research and some thinking about it. I think first, when thinking about the cost of providing affordable housing at a project like Jordan Downs, if we were just comparing building to building, I'm going to say that the cost of building that is an extra 10, 15% because of I'm making some assumptions, but in terms of the labor costs. But on top of that, one of the issues that we have in these larger projects, especially with doing infrastructure, is that all has to be bought out and built through the Bureau of Engineering, which is a significant cost increase over what we would have paid in the private market. And then finally, there were an unusual circumstance with Jordan Downs where there was an amount of remediation, soil remediation for contaminants that nobody could have known. So when I said $800,000, it was, or what did I say, $600,000? It was an all-in number. But to your second question about how to reduce the cost of housing so that more people have the opportunity to own something here in the city of Los Angeles, I am, and this is a personal opinion, so I hope this will, if you're asking me my professional opinion, it's not coming from somebody who's working for the Housing Authority. But no, my personal opinion is that, as a private home builder, which I've done for the last 15 years, I'm not doing that currently, but I'm working, as of a year ago, I'm now working in commercial development, but I did it for 15 years. We compete with hundreds of other very qualified developers to build any kind of housing. Affordable competes doggedly, townhomes, single-family homes, high-rise. Everybody is competing for land, and trying to negotiate certain development rights with the city to try to make that happen. So I think the part of this that is, if it was possible, that would make the most significant difference is that the underlying zoning has to be less restrictive so that we can build without the same. It's not so much, I mean, I think when I've heard this conversation before, it's sort of the rules, you know, the bureaucracy and the CEQA and stuff like that. That all gets mitigated. That all gets, I mean, we have lawyers, we know, you know, how to de-risk sort of that. I think it's just the overall density and height. I think there was a study by Chris Thornburg, Beacon Economics, used to be with UCLA. Maybe it wasn't a study, it was just a sort of a fact he brought up that maybe 30 years ago, this city had some, you know,
10 million.
Thank you. 10 million homes by right one could build. And some economists might say that if we could have 10 million homes in the city right now, we'd actually have close to a supply-demand balance. And you might see prices having more to do with the value of what we're getting. I think right now, with all of the HPOZs, with all of the restrictions in place, I think we're down to 7 or 8 million or something like that. We literally just cannot physically build enough homes.
County of Los Angeles.
I happen to think that there's a product type, coincidentally, that we are building at Jordan Downs, which is a 3-story walk-up townhome, which is you get about 16 units to the acre. It is not out of scale with a lot of single-family neighborhoods. I mean, it's taller, but it is not a high-rise apartment or mid-rise apartment. But I think all in all, you know, that is, if there were one way to help this problem, that's really it. I think, if I may add one more thing, I think that what is we, you know, trying to do the best thing for the city need to be careful of is that whenever affordable restrictions or requirements are put into projects and we have deed restricted or somehow created permanent affordable housing, it is, I'm in no way dissuading anybody from building affordable housing. It's so necessary. But it's also worth noting that any time that we deed restrict something, it's something that years and years and years down the road, we will be looking at that and asking, like, could we have done something different with that? And or could we have utilized those assets in a way that serves more people? So I think it's, you know, it's a tricky problem. I love thinking about it. I love talking about it. And I would love to talk with you more about it, or if I could come back and share some more information with this committee, I'd love to. It's very important to me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Motion to affirm the reappointment.
Second.
Second.
Very good.
That's it. Item number 26.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations and thank you.
Number 26, sir?
Correct.
Righty. Number 26, HCIDLA report and CEO to report relative to a request for authority to execute contracts with 10 nonprofit agencies to provide services as part of the city's domestic violence, human trafficking shelter operations program.
Can we take public comment first? Liliana? Perdón. Tell me how to pronounce your first name. Liliana.
Yeah.
Tavera. Elizabeth Eastland. Mark Rothman. And Kay Brook. Kay? Brook? Buck. Just put an R in there. Okay, Liliana.
Great. Good afternoon. My name is Ileana Tavera. I'm the Executive Director of Haven Hills. We operate emergency and transitional shelters and provide supportive services to domestic violence survivors in the San Fernando Valley, specifically in Council District 3. I urge the Housing Committee to approve HCID's recommendation to continue to fund domestic violence service operations. This will ensure that DV survivors and their children have the immediate safety that emergency shelters provide and access to long-term transitional shelter. Domestic violence and homelessness are deeply intertwined for women and their children, especially those with limited economic resources. DV decreases job stability, threatens financial stability, and interferes with the victim's ability to form supportive relationships to escape the abuse. There are over 2,600 homeless survivors and their children currently fleeing DV and living on the streets in LA County. There are only 465 DV emergency beds and 494 transitional beds specifically dedicated to DV survivors and survivors with children. My council district alone has seen a marked increase in the number of homeless individuals identifying a domestic violence lived experience, from 25% in the 2017 point-in-time count to 41% in the most recent count released last week. Serving DV survivors begins with availability and access to safe physical spaces to support survivors and their children.
Excuse me, they tell me their time's up.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Let's get some uniformity here.
The clock isn't working.
I know.
Right, so we're timing it.
Okay, go. Elizabeth.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Eastland, Executive Director of Rainbow Services and the Chair of the Domestic Violence Alliance for the city. Similar to Haven Hills, we provide shelter and support services to victims of domestic violence. We are all very aware that there's an inadequate amount of resources to meet the needs of those who turn to us for help. Survivors should not have to choose between remaining in a violent household or becoming homeless. They need a continuum of housing options, and the DVSO program has provided funding to support the operations of DV organizations who provide that safe haven and another choice to those fleeing very dangerous situations. While we are grateful for the amount of resources the city has made available for homeless services and how the county and state have stepped up to provide funding and support, we must recognize DV as one of the main drivers into homelessness for women and for family homelessness for single women, single family households. So continuing to fund and providing expanded funding.
Time's up.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Okay. So next is Mark, and you've got 1 minute.
Hi, Mark Rothman, Good Shepherd Shelter. I'm the Chief Executive Officer. I want to piggyback onto what my colleagues said. We're going to see each other at a meeting on Tuesday at Good Shepherd Shelter, which we're proud to host. I want to put this in historical context. You're taking a huge leap forward by approving this measure to fund our shelters and the services we provide. At Good Shepherd, we provide a school for the children, an early childhood center, an adult learning program to move the moms forward so they don't have to return to homelessness and domestic violence. But you're moving forward in solving the homeless problem as well, because two-thirds of the women on the street who are homeless are largely there also because of domestic violence. So it's an extremely efficient way to meet the needs and to solve the city's larger goal of reducing homelessness. And I cannot amplify enough the difference it makes in the lives of each individual family and child. We just brought onto our board a woman who could not rave enough about how much Good Shepherd changed her life by giving her a place to live when she desperately needed it.
Thank you. And finally, okay, and Nancy Volpert, you want to come up? Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Kay Buck, and I'm the CEO of CAST, Coalition to Abolish Slavery and Trafficking. We are a proud operator of a shelter for trafficking survivors that's now a national model since we opened in 2004. And it was the first of its kind in the country. We are especially proud to call Los Angeles our home, since human trafficking is such a prevalent challenge in our communities. I'd like to thank the city leadership, city council members, and especially Nuri Martinez, who I knew is not here, but also council member Krikorian, who've been incredible champions for quality services and increased housing for survivors of trafficking. I'm grateful because it's really outlining the need for specialized services for this population. What I can say is when trafficking survivors graduate from our shelter program, we have a 100% track record in getting people into permanent housing. 80% have jobs when they leave the shelter, and another 20% are in vocational training on their way to get employment. So with this partnership, I know that we can scale the program even more and make Los Angeles a model. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Nancy.
Good afternoon. I'm Nancy Volpert with Jewish Family Service of Los Angeles. I will
Thank you, and I will echo the comments from my colleagues about how important this investment is and how important the work of the council is to reinvest in services for survivors. As you well know, this is the first time in more than a decade that the council has significantly increased the funding for our clients who are in desperate need. Our counseling center is in Councilmember Krikorian's district. As he knows, we have 2 domestic violence emergency shelters as well as a transitional shelter, and we provide safe passage for 250 adults and 268 children last year alone. We appreciate your investment in this. We are getting 9,000 calls a year to our hotline that we respond to in a multilingual way. The needs are still not met, but this is a huge investment, and we appreciate your support.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, council members. Abigail Marquez, Assistant General Manager with the Housing and Community Investment Department, and I oversee the Community Services and Development Bureau. I'm joined by my colleagues from the CAO's office, Emily Zan-Cervantes, and Curtis Watts, our Director of Operations. I just want to take a moment to share the impact that we are anticipating to see with the redesign of the Domestic Violence Shelter Program and the creation of the Human Trafficking Pilot Program, the first of its kind in the city of Los Angeles. In preparation of the release of the RFP, we did a lot of listening. I'll start there. We did a lot of research. We looked at where the gaps in service existed. We convened a lot of roundtables with experts in the field, both within the DV provider field and also within the human trafficking field. We worked very closely with the mayor's office, members of the city council. I also want to acknowledge Alexis Marin, who's here, policy director with Councilmember Nuri Martinez, who was instrumental to us throughout this process. We really wanted to take the opportunity to respond to the gap that the city was having as it relates to serving victims of human trafficking. So not only did we want to expand the services for domestic violence survivors, we also wanted to take this opportunity to respond to the gap in serving victims of human trafficking. Through this redesign, we are, as is outlined in the report, increasing the number of shelters from 8 to 12 shelters and anticipating to serve a minimum of 400 additional individuals each year. So I wanted to underscore that. And I'll turn it over to Curtis Watts, who will walk through very quickly some of the other key innovations of the RFP.
Curtis Watts, Housing and Community Investment Department. Just to drill down a little further into what Abigail was saying, some of the things that we wanted to add as part of the redesign of the program are housing navigators. Our agencies do a great job already in providing and finding stable housing for for their clients. However, we wanted to make sure that they have targeted and direct services into finding or helping clients navigate this housing market that we're currently facing to find stable housing once they're determined eligible to transition out of shelter. Also, we wanted to standardize and make more uniform the level of service that we're providing across all of our contractors. So we're requiring that all of our agencies have a licensed clinician oversee the services and the counseling that's provided to their clientele. Some of the other things that we're adding is we received funding this past year to improve our data collection. We are implementing a new system this year to a better case management system so that we have better data to track and determine the outcomes for all of our clients. And as part of the program, as Abigail was saying, we are adding 2 human trafficking shelters as part of this new program design, and that is not enough to serve the problem, the issue that we have in the city. So what we will be doing is providing training for all of our domestic violence agencies so that they can handle the overflow and better serve human trafficking survivors that aren't able to find refuge in the shelters that we're contracting for this program year. So those are some of the new features and some of the new innovations that we added as part of the program design for this upcoming program year.
On the average, how many stay at a shelter?
It varies. Emergency shelter is typically 1 to 3 months, but because of the lack of housing.
I'm sorry, my question is how many beds do you have?
How many beds? The current system was providing 473 beds. The new system will provide 571 beds.
Okay. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Good afternoon. Emily Zen Cervantes with the Office of the CAO. I just wanted to add that HID is requesting contracts for a one-year term beginning July 1st with 4 one-year renewal options or a total of 5 years. And per the Los Angeles Administrative Code, Section 10.5B, anytime they want to make an amendment, they should return to council for approval of those amendments. However, HCID did request an exemption from this requirement to streamline the grant contracting process. However, our office recommends that HCID continue to return, otherwise to council for approval for amendments. And we concur with their recommendations as they originally state in their transmittal, and there is no additional impact to the general fund.
All right. Questions? No impact to the general fund? No questions? How can that be?
No new impact to the general fund, but we've been working over the last many years to ensure at least a level of stability for domestic violence support, given the cutbacks that we've suffered at the federal level. And grateful that we've been able to actually have a little increase this year, increase the number of available beds. I saw in the report that I don't know whether to take it as good news or bad news that we're actually going to be serving more victims this year. It's an odd thing to say that that's good news, but I take it as good news because the number of total victims has always been far greater than what we can possibly serve. And so the fact that we've increased the number of anticipated people who will be receiving help by a third is, I think, quite good news, despite the fact that I wish the number were 0.
Right. We agree.
Roughly, what's the division between, or if you all know this, the division between human trafficking victims and domestic violence victims?
Division within...
In terms of the ratio, is it 2 to 1?
Within the system currently?
Yeah.
I will say that primarily the 8 shelters that we're funding were serving domestic violence survivors. I think a lot of it was the lack of beds that were available, and the need was much greater to serve domestic violence survivors. They were referring them to CAST, but CAST is the only shelter currently. Their shelter has 10 beds. So there's some agencies that were serving more. I don't have the exact figures, but I would say in general, they were primarily dedicated to serving domestic violence survivors, with a few exceptions across some of the centers.
Thank you.
Okay. What action do we take on this? Receive and file or?
I'm sorry, we're going to adopt the CAO report.
Okay, motion to adopt the report.
Second.
Seconded. So be the order.
Thank you.
Before we go to item 27, we're going back to item 25.
Item 25, ACIDLA report and the CAO to report relative to authorization to issue commitments and support letters to existing managed pipeline projects applying to the California Tax Credit Allocation Committee in 2018, round 2, and related matters.
Good afternoon. HCID is requesting authority for various actions related to projects currently in the Affordable Housing Managed Pipeline, or AHMP. These actions include a new funding commitment letter for 1 project and support letters for 2 projects that are not receiving from the city, but are all applying to the California Tax Credit Allocation Committee 2018 Round 2 for 9% low-income housing tax credits. The HCID is also requesting revised funding commitments or additional city funding for 3 projects. Subsequent to the release of their transmittal, the HCID requested to add the following recommendation: to provide they're requesting authority to provide a support letter for the alternate project listed in Table 1 of the report in the event one of the 2 projects listed in Table 1 applying for the City of Los Angeles geographic set-aside no longer applies for 9% tax credits. Our office concurs with HCID's recommendations as amended. Additionally, I'd like to make a technical correction to the CAO recommendation number 1. Recommendation number 1 should read, adopt recommendations 1 through 8 of HCID's report, not 1 through 7. Finally, there is no impact to the general fund. All of the recommendations are funded by special funds. There are also staff from the Housing Community Investment Department here to answer any additional questions.
Questions?
How much per unit?
Yes.
Why is it going up?
This is Tim Elliott of HZ Development Manager. The projects range in price. Some of those, were talked about previously, with Jordan Downs being one of them, and that has a special, all the infrastructure that's built into that, building a whole new city, essentially. Its share of that money is reflected in these costs. And there's a project on Vermont in Koreatown that's it was the headquarters of the county parks department, and it's going to have a full YMCA on the bottom floor, and that cost is the land is free, but the give was that they would build out the shell for the Y, and that cost is reflected in here. And that site alone in Koreatown is worth $6 million, and that's reflected in here. So even though they're not paying for it. So these numbers sound high, but some of them have explanations. But most of them are right at between the $500,000 and $600,000 per unit amount.
So specifically, there's one in Council District 8. Vermont.
That's in 10. It's at between 4th and it's 430.
Oh, got it. Okay.
It's 433
I'm
Vermont.
sorry, I was confusing it with Roland Curtis.
433. Mr. Krikorian?
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Move to receive, adopt the report as amended. So moved. So be the order.
Very good.
Okay, final. Item 27.
Item 27, City Attorney Report and Ordinance relative to amending Los Angeles Municipal Code to make technical changes, clarify inspection and notice procedures, and to amend appeal procedures to conform with federal and state law.
Before we hear from you, can we get Mr. Thomas Nitty to come up first? I think you guys can share. Mr. Nitty, welcome.
Good afternoon, council members. How much time do I have?
1 minute.
1 minute.
Okay. I've prepared my comments in a written letter, which I've submitted to the board clerk, and I have additional copies here. I see the proposed amendment as a paragraph by the Housing Department in the guise of a technical amendment. Let me be specific. On page 2, Section 161.401A is expanding the jurisdiction of the Housing Department from maintenance supervision, which it has in the present ordinance, to use and occupancy. Use and occupancy are in the purview of the Building Department. And this sets up an irreconcilable conflict between the departments. I've been in cases that have gone as long as 5 years, where the Building Department and the Housing Department have different opinions of use and occupancy. This appears throughout the amendment. In addition, there's no reason to give arrest authority to housing inspectors. The rest of my comments are in writing, and maybe if I may give them to your clerk, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Give them over here to the sergeant. Okay. Now, can we hear from the CA?
Good afternoon, Deborah Breithaupt, City Attorney's Office. We were here today on some proposed amendments to the Systematic Code Enforcement Ordinance. I heard the comments by my esteemed colleague, Mr. Nitty, representing various landlords in the city of Los Angeles. I understand his comments reflect a misapprehension that there's been some type of expanding of the scope of the Systematic Code Enforcement Program, and he's actually incorrect on that point, and the representatives from the Housing Department can expound on that more thoroughly if you would prefer. I would note, just for the record, that Health and Safety Code Section 17961, that's in the presently existing Municipal Code Section 161-401 does give the Housing Department the authority to cite for use and occupancy violations in addition to other municipal code violations. In short, the ordinance amendments reflect sort of an evolution of the housing code that hasn't had a really thorough work through in a period of time, making technical amendments, clarifying code enforcement inspection procedures, clarifying the notice provisions for conducting systematic code enforcement inspections. It also is conforming to some recent case developments, most notably the Patel case, expressly providing the opportunity for a landlord or tenant to seek pre-compliance review with a judge in the event that they object to an inspection of their rental unit or their property. I can take any questions if there are.
Colleagues? Nope. No, we're good. We're fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion to adopt the report from our esteemed city attorney. Okay.
Very good.
No objection? So be the order. Does that conclude the meeting or we go to closed session? Go to closed session. We have closed session now?
Following closed session item, it's the cases of Garris Switzer Teague versus City of Los Angeles and Paloma versus City of Los Angeles in connection with systematic code enforcement ordinance. Will we be going to closed session? Okay. We are.
Oh, and I would note there's an urgency clause.
Okay. Move to adopt with urgency. Objection? Objection. Okay. Go back in. Thank you. What's he doing?
Adam had a suggestion where, so just in case they come back. Adam, we just got to, what your recommendation is, so that when it comes back,
Essentially, just be continued since you're not taking any action on this matter today, I assume. It was just a briefing, information, and so it'd be continued till such time that you decide to hear it again.
Yeah.
And that's perfectly open.
Okay. Motion to continue the matter?
No. Okay, so I assume that's the committee's intent, then, just to continue the matter.
It is.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's it.
All right, can we move to close the meeting?
Oh, and as to the amendments to the ordinance, if we could, I think the thought was to move that forward to council.
With urgency?
With urgency, yeah.
Okay, we'll take care of that.
Okay. Move to end the meeting.
All right.
Great.